Welcome back to season 2, episode 8. Today, we delve into how do you become a manager who manages other managers. There has been a lot of news recently from Meta and a lot of other big tech companies where they have been letting go of a lot of middle-level managers, looking at them as dead weight or saying they're not necessary to contribute or for the bottom line of the company. So we have a wide array of views here. So we wanted to delve into that and see what the advantages and disadvantages of this role might be. Let's start with Louis.
I guess maybe I'll start with my own career. I worked as an IC for many years, and then I guess I begrudgingly became a manager because I needed to scale myself. And after hiring maybe 6 or 7, 8 people, it became pretty clear that we can't just keep layering on more people into this one team. We need to start thinking a little bit strategically about how that's going to break out. And that's when my team split into multiple teams. And I guess I became a manager of managers. A dangerous place to be, but it is kind of dangerous, right? Because at this point in time, you're managing maybe 3 people. Let's say you have 3 teams and you have 3 direct reports, right? And you're in this place where you're no longer building the stuff. You're not setting the strategy. You probably don't even have authority to get the head count without approvals up above. And so as you're doing this, I think you want to be thinking about where this is all going. Where does this sort of river lead, if you will? And if you have a path to continue to grow, I think that transition makes sense. But I just think it's sort of a bad place to be in perpetuity, let's say for a decade, as just a manager of managers. I feel like that's the place where you're just sending emails and doing PowerPoints, and ChatGPT's gotten really good at that. And so my 2 cents, and for me, I was very lucky. My teams continue to grow. Before you know it, teams under me were starting to split into multiple teams, but always it was that environment. The company was in hypergrowth. And so it was that environment where things could continue to go. But so again, I was very lucky, but I do have a negative opinion of just being a manager of managers in perpetuity without thinking about director, VP level, and these other things.
Yeah, so that's great. On my side, I think what I have noticed on how people usually become a manager of managers is usually by running multiple tracks of work. So you start with a single track of work and then you grow your team, and then like all of a sudden you have another 3, 4 engineers running another kind of track of work, and then you're stuck there because you cannot manage, let's say, 10 engineers by yourself and run 2 different projects that might be running at the same time. So either you promote one of the engineers to be the tech lead or become the tech manager, whatever, and then you pretty much automatically become a manager of managers. And then like after that, once you have someone leading one of the tracks and you're still leading the other track, you're not able to grow like more than 2. But then whenever you bring another manager, then you become a manager of manager and you don't even know it. And your job is pretty much to go into other teams or other like projects that are not working and helping them to fix things there. It might be by helping them to navigate the org, it might be to put some process in place. And then when you see it, you're pretty much managing managers and like doing deep dives and like getting like really deep on something, but moving on, unblocking. And I feel it is, as you said, Louis, it is a fun job for a while, but I think after a couple of years, you're going to lose most of your technical abilities and you're going to be basically working effectively in that particular company that you work for. And on the particular technology that you were familiar with before you actually became a manager of manager, because your job is going to be meetings and PowerPoints and one-on-ones and all that. And you're going to become a people manager, not going to have much time to do coding or to even get deep on things. It's pretty hard to maintain yourself up to date after that point. So you have really to think that, is it worthwhile? I'm growing, I'm like escalating the org and all that. Or you're going to be pretty much on a really bad place, right? Because now middle managers are pretty much getting all ripped off.
And thank you both for sharing perspectives that I wasn't thinking of. So in some startups or even smaller companies, being a director or a VP or SVP is a very coveted position, right? There might be only one VP or there might be only one SVP. So let's say you did make it to manager of managers, you might not have a transition path unless that VP either leaves the company or retires for a position to open up. Unless the startup or the smaller company is rapidly growing, then it's a different story. Then by organic growth, sure, you're hiring like crazy, you need more people to manage. In that case, it makes sense. But what do you do, or do you have choices when you work in a smaller company with a very flat organization where a lot of such positions do not exist? And to your point, you don't want to be stuck because now you're losing touch with technology, and the last technology that you worked with hands-on is probably the one you'll remember for a long time. But after that, you're just doing people management and PowerPoint and maybe some part of delivery.
I am currently a manager of managers, and I was very excited to get to this step in my career. I actually feel like it's pretty hard. I think we've all alluded to a bit, really hard to break from becoming a first-time manager of an engineering team into a manager of managers, because it's, again, a very different role. And I actually am quite enjoying it. And I'll tell you why. I think because I'm a manager of managers at a startup. And so I'm only one level removed from the C-suite per se. And yes, a lot of my days are one-on-ones, and instead of PowerPoints, docs, because I will forever to be a docs over PowerPoints person. But I'm not so far removed because I'm meeting with all of the engineers at least once a month. I'm actually in the teams writing PRDs and in some of the RFC meetings myself, and have to stay connected because of how small the company is. And I'm not having the pressure of having to set the company level strategy for engineering. Like, I can set the strategy for my team or my teams and my direct and like my area of ownership, but that ladders up to an overall product strategy or company strategy. And great. I think it's a kind of nice in between depending on where you're at. I do remember when I was at Amazon, I was a first-time manager and looking at my manager who's managing multiple managers. And that is a very different role, right? That's like a senior manager role as opposed to like director or VP. And you are pretty much what everyone's been describing here, not close enough to the teams to know really what's going on, but you're reporting up and you're in this like cycle of just like weekly updates and presentations and telling people that we're doing X, Y, and Z towards like these OKRs, but you're not really doing anything and you don't really know how you're going to do that thing because you don't really know what's going on in the teams. So I feel like it's not such a bad position depending on where you're at, and mostly opting for a smaller company.
I have some questions, let's say, that I hope that other people can answer after me. I found that when I was briefly a manager of managers, that I was too far removed from the actual teams to know what issues they had without being informed by the managers themselves. So I would often bring them things from upper management, but I knew nothing about actually what was going on in their teams without being told completely. So it effectively cut off from me what was happening at the engineering team level, because I couldn't just go hang out in their rooms and I couldn't go see what work they were doing, right? Because everyone wonders, why is my manager's manager here? Are they in trouble? Did they do something wrong? It leaves you in this position where you're not really able to technically be involved at all without everyone just dropping what they're doing to see why you're there. And it just makes it really awkward. And I was wondering if, Mitra, you specifically, since you're doing this now, if you have thoughts on that. And while you think about that, the other thing I was thinking about is, so this used to not be a thing that we wondered about, right? I want to say, let's say 6 months ago, because we're like, we need people managers. We need to be able to grow our people. We need to be able to grow our managers. But I do also wonder, the number of roles above a manager of managers starts to get very small, right? It's totally a pyramid structure where you're not going to become the director of engineering until the existing director moves out or you're hiring more people. That's often why you end up with think Louis calls this like your empire builder of managers, where you have to hire more people specifically so there's room for you to move up a level, because you'll have to hire your replacement. You can become a director, all that, right? And in more recently, now that we've started to have these contractions in tech and we are hiring fewer people, now it's suddenly become this, why do we need people managers? We need more managers with their hands in the technology. And I wonder if this really is just a brand new thing. If this isn't something that we used to worry about before.
Yeah, I did this now. So I've just returned from maternity leave. So I'm looking at my time in this role as two separate jobs almost. And I think I did it wrong the first time. So the first time I come in, I say, wow, I'm a manager of managers now. Look at all my teams. Like I'm going to be across all of them. And I went really wide, but not super deep on any of them. So I'm meeting every engineer once every 3 months. And I'm doing a lot of like people management of my managers without even really understanding what their teams are building or owning, because I didn't have the time to get really in depth for any one of them. And I don't think that was super successful because I just wasn't able to be impactful enough on any one area. Coming back from maternity leave, I have, I think, 2 areas that I'm really focusing on. And I actually think it's been quite a blessing because I've told everyone else, if you're not in these 2 areas, like, I don't care about you yet. I'll come to you in 2 months. Like, I need to focus and really understand what's going on in these groups. And I think the best way to approach it is like you and your product counterpart, if that's how your company is structured, are the leads of the team's leads, if that makes sense. So like my direct report and my product counterpart's direct report are like co-leads of this team, and the 4 of us together, and if there's a designer there, the 5 of us together are the leads of this team. And our job is to make sure that the team leads are successful. And I actually think working together across product and design to empower all of the team leads has been the way that I'm able to stay in the weeds of what's going on, but also be the most impactful, because now I know what's going on the product side in terms of like strategy and like prioritization, and I can have a voice there. I also can start seeing Figmas if I want to, and I can really understand like how are product and design working together? Are they getting engineering in the room early enough, and be in those conversations? But then if you're now meeting as a group of 4 or 5 people, like weekly or bi-weekly, to determine the strategy of this team and what this team should be working on, you inherently learn more, but also need to know more. And so I'm just naturally saying, add me to this channel or send me this doc. And it's a lot of not in meeting time, just like reading and talking to people, which just means I'm working more. But as a result, I'm able to be impactful, have a valuable opinion, just do something of value, as opposed to just being like this like middle manager head that says that sounds good and I don't really even know what I'm talking about.
Vic asked a great question. I'm going to touch on that as well a little bit, but I think let's just conceptually, if we think about, if we zoom out a little bit, what is why did I even say that a line manager is actually an advantageous role in some ways? It's because you could probably be a line manager for a long time, and it just means you have people that are ICs reporting to you, you're attending all those stand-ups, you're always clued in, right? It's not weird for you to show up to, just like Vic said, it's not weird, you're the manager, it's not weird for you to go and talk to the business and talk to everybody and be in the loop, all literally in everything that's going on. And so you have a pulse in every single IC on that team. You have a pretty good pulse. But if you're the manager of managers, it's weird if you just show up to the stand-ups and you show up to everything, because it's like too much. And first of all, you can't do it. But second of all, it is too much, and it's going to be, things might get a little weird. I think the good news is, right, so what does that mean? But you're still doing a lot of similar things that you would as a line manager. You're still doing one-on-ones. My opinion is, even when I was a senior director, right, maybe we had 6 teams, maybe more than that, right? And I was still talking to even the people that were 2 levels below, because maybe I couldn't talk to them every 2 weeks, right? But once a month, we still had a regular coffee, a regular chat, because so you still want to keep yourself relevant. And that's not a weird thing to do, to have a regular recurring one-on-one with everybody. And so that's I think it was one of the generals, I hate war analogies at work, because work's not war, but it was one of the generals, I think, that said that one of the ways that they kept the pulse on what was happening with the army was like they talked to like people that were 2 or 3 levels below on a regular basis. And it's a really good strategy. But so then the second thing is, so now we're in this spot, right? We're getting paid more. It's not all bad. You're going to get paid more money. You have bigger scope. On paper, you're important, right? And so it's not like a bad thing to be a manager of managers for maybe a little while. But I view it as it's like a training ground, right? So what happens when you're in that role, all the escalations are going to start bubbling up to you. So that's when, that's when you can get good, because you're going to see way more problems than you would ever see as just a line manager. Now you got 3 or 4 teams where things could be going wrong. And I promise you, you're going to have to deal with a problem child on the team or whatever the heck is going on. That's going to be your job now. You're going to have to figure out, how do I fix this, right? And you're going to be involved. There's a PIP, there's all these things. And so it's a training ground for the next level. If you want to be a C-level person, you need to have seen enough people problems, enough things that could go wrong to get to those levels. And so I think it's a really good training ground for that, but you have to enjoy that. So you're going to be dealing with the toughest problems pretty consistently. And yeah, there was a couple of things I wanted to throw onto this, but I'm going to let Tiago go. But it's not all bad. I think you can get really good. You just don't want to be in this like intermediate state probably for more than a couple of years max. That's my opinion. But anyway.
That's awesome. Before I go over, I think your comments, Louis, I was actually thinking about Vic's question, right? And what are the ways that you can do some deep dives and stay close to the ground as a manager of managers, right? I was thinking about a few things. One thing that I have started last year is what we call skip level, like roundtables. So I often meet like once a month with all the ICs of each particular team to hear them, to see what's going on, to hear their question for an hour or so. And that gives me a perspective of who is participating, what kind of questions they're asking. But that's not enough. The other thing that Mitra said that makes a lot of sense is almost to have a priority of the week or of the month, along with your peers, to do some deep dive on a particular, let's say, team that's not working. Let's say that is like a problem, something that's really critical, someone that's really struggling, and your job is to help them and then move on, like almost. And you do that like often, and you get as deep as you can. And I think it is super helpful to get that ability to be able to do those like really deep dives. The other thing, I think, as Mitra was saying, like you put a lot of effort into reading RFCs and also participating on crashes, on like postmortems, on those meetings that impact the whole ecosystem that you are responsible for. And I think those are really good ways for you to still stay in touch with a few ICs. And I think the other thing, and that goes back to a comment that Mitra made about you don't want to go too broad, but too thin, right? Just, you do like monthly one-on-ones with all 45 engineers, right? And you treat all engineers like equally, right? You have a super junior engineer and a staff engineer, and you do the same kind of one-on-one, the same kind of thing. And I did that in the past, and I think it's good to start and to connect with people. But like in order to be efficient, you have to almost be a little bit silly and do one-on-ones more often with the people that are like the high performers or people that they're super like overwhelmed, right? Even though they don't report to you, that is a really good way to stay in touch and to hear their perspectives. And it's almost to double check what your managers are telling you, right? And there is nothing preventing you. And ICs actually love that. And finally, you usually have staff engineers or principal engineers reporting to you. And those are the ones that are asking the really deep, like technical questions, or really trying to plan the roadmap for the next 6 months, year, 2 years. And you have to rely on them, but also to question and to challenge them. And I feel that those kind of challenging questions, this challenging like reviews that you do on RFCs, on the problems, on crashes, they give you a perspective that's broad and deep at the same time. But again, I think like going back to Louis' point, you are not as useful as an IC anymore. You're seeing other kind of problems and you're navigating at a different kind of level. And if you lose your job, you're probably not going to be there again in another company. So it's going to be a tough job to find a similar spot.
I have a question for you guys, especially the ones who managed multiple teams and maybe teams not within your usual wheelhouse. How do you kind of balance paying attention to all the teams? Because I think we as humans generally aren't good multitaskers, no matter how much we think we are. And then I notice usually the team that falls off the radar is maybe the one that you're not as familiar with, like DevOps or security or SRE. And those are very important teams. And I'm curious if folks have good answers.
Is it automatically assumed that once you are a manager of managers, that your work-life balance is automatically inferior to what you had in the past? Because to Thiago's point, and to what Louis was touching on earlier too, I'm a first level manager. All of my direct reports are individual contributors. So let's say I'm working with one or two engineers that are having performance issues, right? So I'm working on PIPs for one or two, but my manager is working on PIPs for all the managers and all the teams, right? So he has, let's say, 12 PIPs that he's working on at the same time. And same for like crashes or production issues or incidents so I'm only worried about my teams and making sure that my part of the ecosystem is stable, is up and running, we'll be responding quickly. But as a manager of managers, everyone's problem is your problem now. Maybe a twofold question between what Mitra asked and what I did.
First, I wanted to just say that I think as a manager, your TLs, the tech leads, and the architects kind of become your really good friends in a lot of ways. And you have to do that to not make things weird, because you have to have maybe design reviews or certain sessions where you're going to be in the loop on things. And it's not going to be weird that you're tuning in and listening to these folks. And I think that's really important, to stay in the loop. Without that, I think you're going to struggle as a manager of managers to keep track of everything. And then there was the second question in terms of work-life balance. Yeah, work-life balance sucks. It's much worse, right? Like, you're now at the whims of all these problems. If there is a massive outage and any one of your teams is involved, it's not going to look that good if you're not there. It's just going to look terrible. If there's any sort of, and it's not, now you have multiple teams, you got multiple products, and they could all go down, right? So you got that problem. Then you have a bigger business that you're sort of negotiating with, trying to figure out their roadmap, trying to figure out their goals. You have politics that start to come into play now. People just start playing stupid games that really are not that beneficial, but they play them because it's just what happens. I don't know why it happens, but it starts heavily at this level of like manager of managers. And I'd say it's like useless stuff, right? It makes you feel terrible, but it's there. And then there's the promo calibrations and the trading horses of promoting people. And you mentioned PIPs, right? But that's one thing. I'd say that's actually probably a lot easier in some ways than deciding who gets promoted, than arguing over people, with people to make sure that people are getting, because you love all your managers, right? So like you want to help all of them, but at the same time, you can't. You have a fixed pool of promotions that you're going to give. Like previous organizations I've been a part of, 15% is going to get promoted each cycle. That's the max. They're never going to allow more than that. If you've got 50 people, that's not a lot of people that that are going to get. And so people are going to start arguing, and you have multiple teams and multiple managers, and you got to make decisions. Someone's going to be mad at you. So work-life balance is not that good. And there's all kinds of other problems. And then I think going to Mitra's question about teams that are like problem child, or teams that you don't really fully understand. This is the biggest thing. This is the thing that's going to really ruin your work-life balance, is because there are going to be certain people in certain teams that you are going to have to dedicate so much time to really understand and help along. So if one project falls behind and it's one team, you're figuring out like, how do I get them out of the mud? How do I help them out? How do I make something? And so you become far more involved in those kinds of things. It's rarely, the messed up thing is it's rarely good people that cause problems, right? This is the truth, right? It's rarely good people. Usually just do a great job. And good people, the crazy thing is, if they do have a problem, it's usually addressable one time and it's done, and that doesn't happen again. And maybe the problem is they want to raise, or I don't know what the problem is, but it's an easy thing. And I don't mean bad people in the sense that I just mean they have all kinds of problems. They're always bringing problems to you. And it's really challenging because they're going to take a lot of your time. But that you probably would rather spend the time with these other people that are working really well, but you can't because these people have the problem. And so it's a tough spot. It's a tough spot to be a manager of managers. So anyway, I don't think that fully answered the question, but I do think you're going to have to deal with the problem children. There's no way around it. It's going to impact your work-life balance. These are not good answers I'm giving, but this is all the truth.
Just before Thiago jumps in, or maybe Thiago can help answer as well. Is it just on the flip side, just to make sure it's not all dark clouds and bones everywhere?
Getting paid well, Gary. You know, they're paying you for this stuff.
True, but is it true? So generally, when you hire ICs, it's based on one interview over a day or a few hours, and then you truly get to find out only after a little bit on how well they're performing. Assuming most managers have been promoted within the company and not hired externally, you know that these are people that have an aptitude for being glued, that have a high technical aptitude. There's a reason they made it to that manager level. Does it make your job easier being a manager of managers, knowing that there is a higher caliber of people that have made their way through this level, and you're not working directly with ICs and different level of talent? Or is that not necessarily true?
I was actually going to say that because I share the same feeling as Louis, but on the other hand, I remember my work-life balance when I was like a first level engineering manager, leading projects and having to go to do PRs and to fix bugs, at the same time manage people, manage stakeholders. It was much worse because you have to be like in way too many different levels at the same time. And I feel even though your scope is much bigger as a director, if you have good people and if you're like improving things over time, your job is more to be a reviewer or to be the one that's trying to catch problems before they happen. And you have more time to be thinking about those things usually. Another thing is if you actually join an organization that's on a really bad note and you're trying to stabilize it, then it's going to be tough. But it's something that's growing organically and is stabilizing over time. I feel my work-life balance as a director today is much better than when I was engineering manager like 5 years ago. Like I remember having so much more challenge, even though the promotions and peeps are time consuming, like the crashes, you have to be there. If you learn to do the job well, it's going to consume a lot less time because your job is going to be more just ask questions and, hey, make sure to do this, go in this direction, this is not right. And actually doing the work, like creating the pitch, putting down the pitches for promotion, like jumping on like to the pairing with the developers to fix things. That's a tough job. I think and I went back to be a first level manager when I moved to Apple after being a director for 3 years. And man, that was tough. I was like completely out of my comfort zone again. And that tells a lot, right? Like sometimes you feel that just because you were higher up, you're going to be more stressed, or it's just, I think you get used to that as well. And to go back to Mitra's question about, okay, what can you do to manage areas that are not your expertise? I feel that probably not a good answer, but if you have some kind of like tracker dashboard that they're not like having problems week after week or behind on projects and all that, it's time to jump in and be closer and to do all you can to get deep there, to read books about that area, to connect more with one-on-ones with folks that have the expertise. But if things are working and is not your area of expertise and you have good managers there, and there are other areas that are burning, maybe don't even worry about it. It's more like the idea of the selective micromanagement, right? It's like you micromanage the areas that are like red, that are like people are not performing well, that you're seeing this is going to explode. But if people are not telling you and you're not seeing any red flags and you have a lot of other things to do, I think just keep moving. I feel that's usually the advice. Mitra.
Yeah, you said a lot of great things that I feel like I want to touch on. I think the point about selective micromanagement is so key. And like any job, it's again different from being a first-time manager or manager of a direct engineering team. Tiago said you're learning. I feel there's a learning curve. And then after a few months, a few years, like you can learn how to do the job properly. It's very different, I feel like, from managing a direct team. So I went through this learning curve pretty recently, and I feel like my first approach was do what I would do for like an engineering team in the sense of the people management, right? Like really focusing on like, where do you want to go next in your career? And let's talk about where specific projects you want to do. But managers don't need that type of management. I feel like instead they want almost a partner. Like you need to really help them figure out where to focus their energy, where to focus their team, how to partner well, like across the org with different teams or across functions, how to think about like how to prioritize people's time and how to evaluate people. And it's like very much like partner work. And then I think you coach them up to be good managers, at which point you can, like Tiago said, okay, you're good, I can ignore you for a bit. And I think that I learned recently, right? Like changing the approach of like active management to like partnership micromanagement almost. And that's what I mean by like joining the team with them almost, and like really leaning into what the team's doing to learn that. So I feel like that's like a different approach that you maybe just learn over time how to do differently. And I had a bunch of other things I want to respond to, Tiago, but I forgot. Louis, you have your hand up.
I think that the major reason for the work-life balance shift is that you lose some control, right? When you're a manager, you definitely have the ability to obviously impact that one project or that one thing that your team's working on. And Tiago, you could do the pull request if you need to, right? You're not that far removed that you can't jump in and just whatever, let's get it to the finish line together. But as a manager of managers, you can't do that, right? So you're at the whims of the winds basically, and you're trying to set sail and you're trying to figure it out and control where you're going to go. But no matter what, you don't have the same level of control that you would. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is that your things are popping up. And I completely agree. Over time, you basically want to get better and better at this. And actually, there are a lot of tools that you have, right? And so, the mechanisms that you have to steer these things into the right direction, like influence, for example, people, just because of your title, people respect you a little more. So when you show up to a meeting and you say something should be done a certain way, generally people do it that way because you spoke, right? And it's a different kind of thing. It's a different kind of control. You can't necessarily see them do it. You can't, but usually they will do that. But you have other tools. We talked about their promotions, right? You get to promote a certain amount of people, who can show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome, right? The teams that are going to get the carrot are going to be the ones that are doing whatever it takes, right? So those are the kinds of, you get some levers and you get to influence things heavily, but you don't have the same level of, it's almost like you got analog control versus like digital or something where you're on the pulse and the thing's going to steer exactly where you send it.
In my typical fashion in this one, I was actually going to ask another question, which is, how do you know when you need to pip one of your managers as a manager of managers, right? How do you know that they're not doing well? Because they are your source of truth for everything below you. In theory, you have hired the best people at that role and they're independent people and you should be able to fully trust them. How do you know that they're not doing well?
I had many cases of that I had to pip managers in the past year. There are a few red flags that come to mind. Like the first one is not managing low performers, not starting pips. And it's almost, if I find something on calibration that should be done like 3, 4 months, 5 months before, is usually bad management, especially if it is someone that is like expectation or like was really off.
Can you elaborate and expand on finding out in calibration for people on this call that don't know?
Oh, yeah. Imagine that. Okay, so if you work on a big company, you usually have performance cycles, right? Yearly or every 6 months, where you have to basically rate everybody, right? All the ICs, all the managers, everybody gets rated. And usually you do a pre-calibration with only your org before you go to company-wide calibration sessions, or you usually have clusters of calibrations, right? And that's actually a good gut check. Like maybe if you find that someone is bringing a case, that someone that's like expectation, way below expectation, you never heard that before in one-on-ones, you never like you never heard like a feedback that manager has given to that person, that's usually a bad sign. And even worse, if it is someone that you have asked the manager, oh, how is this person doing, or giving feedback, and they're telling you, yes, I have, and then it gets there and like it's all bad, because it's usually the guardrail of the process, right? Like when you get to performance calibration, that is usually whenever you see some problems, and the other problem is someone that has 5 promotions, single manager that has 5 promotions, and that's maybe something is off too.
Are there other sources, Thiago, for that come to mind other than calibration where you would find this out?
Oh, yeah. You would find out if you hear, let's say, product managers complaining about the engineering team not being productive, people not showing up to meetings, like people not engaging. Oh, I never seen this person on any reply or any thread from this person on the engineering Slack channel in the past 2 months. What is this person doing? That's supposed to be a senior engineer, right? What's happening? And so that's another one. And the other thing is, if you have ICs that are coming up to you from that manager perspective and asking you, okay, how do I grow in my career? I have not been getting feedback. Or the other thing is, if the team is not able to make decisions on like tough, like architecture decisions and all that, if the manager is not able to be decisive, that's usually a problem. But I would not say that's when you should start a PEEP for a manager. But I have seen basically the people management side, managing low performer being like a really key thing, and that easily can get out of hand. And on the other side, not being technical, or being more as a product manager versus engineering manager, and be more on the process side, Jira and all that, and not actually, like, for example, once a week at least, get and look at some pull requests, add comments and challenge engineers on what they're doing. Or whenever they see the same engineer giving the same stand-up update for 3 days in a row, I'm blocked, and like they don't question, that's usually another bad sign. But I mean,
Thiago,
yeah.
if you've got a bad team under you, chances are you've got a bad manager.
Maybe, because I think as a manager, like even if you have a bad team, there are many things you could do you can give visibility to everyone on one. You can put everyone on PIP. You can you can be the one pushing. I think the challenge is if that's happening for a long time and you're not complaining, you're not trying to do things, then I think that then is a bad manager and a bad team. But it is a tough one.
There's so many things that we touched on here. I feel really quickly before I forget, I think something that can often be hard to understand when you become a manager is you have power and you can literally tell people and teams what to do. And again, that's something I learned over time, but there's a lot as a manager of an engineering team. You have a lot less power, right? You of course can like maybe help define your roadmap and define what people are doing, but you can't, if your manager's manager, you need to focus on this instead, or why do we have this many errors? Like you immediately shift focus, right? But as a manager of managers, or especially as a director, VP level, you set that directive. And I think that can be an uncomfortable thing to learn or to do once you start. So like you can't be complaining, is what I come to say, is you should be then like, if you're about to complain about something, the first question is like, why haven't you solved it then, if you know this is a problem? That's like an interesting mindset shift, I feel like. But I wanted to just quickly touch on something you said earlier, Thiago, about like, how do you see if people are doing the right things? And like we talk about calibrations and performance reviews of being a good time to check in on that. But I'm not sure if you guys have sensed this. I often see in calibrations, like directors and VPs have opinions about engineers, people they don't work with directly, or, at all. And it's all off of perception, right? It's who are they seeing presenting demos and like posting that they're shipping often? Who are they seeing being loud about like issues that they want to fix and like proactively doing things? And the one thing that I'm wary of, and I think as we go into companies that have more in-office culture, for example, just because you see someone in the office a lot or working at their desk a lot does not equal like value. And I think it's important to be really wary of the perception and not over indexing on that. And when you come into calibrations with your managers and you tell me who's the best engineer, who's the worst, or like this person, I don't think this person's doing so well, managers are naturally and hopefully going to be protective of their team and also probably try and tell you what they think you want to hear, right? Oh, but they shipped 5 new features and they wrote this many RFCs. I think to make sure that you're getting a really objective view of how your teams are doing and how everyone's doing, you as a manager have to establish a really good framework for evaluation. And really, it's not as simple as a career ladder. I thought it was, again, like mistakes and things I'm learning in my time in this role, but it's not just a career ladder. It's really talking to everyone across the org about this ladder that you have, really diving deep into each of the competencies and like, what does this mean for a promotion? How does this translate into like my performance reviews? In this competency, what's meeting expectations versus exceeding, and like really getting nitty gritty in there, because you want to make sure everyone has the same understanding of like what you're expecting.
To add a couple more red flags, just for fun. If you're seeing like a lot of people transferring out of a team or coming to you or seeing they're actively seeking out other teams, it's usually a sign that maybe there's something wrong with the manager below you that's managing that team for you. One thing that I've found is, especially if you're in tune and you have regular one-on-ones with people that are 2 or 3 levels, depending if you're director, whatever, VP, is that you're going to have a pretty good finger on the pulse. And if somebody is complaining and you have people complaining about their manager, which is a rare event, right? Like things have to be really messed up for somebody to say, so-and-so is a bad manager. And if that happens, so you got to take that very seriously. And it can't happen. It's happened. And sometimes what they do, right, is they'll even tell another manager, a prospective manager that they want to go into about what's happening in their team. And so you might not even hear it directly because maybe they think you're friends with the manager that's reporting to you and you're not really going to hear it. And so they'll tell, and then the thing is, you got to have, as a manager of managers, you got to have good relationships across your organization. This whole influence bit, you want that other manager to come and tell you about your manager. You want them to say, what the hell's going on? This person's not reviewing any pull requests. The code is shit. Everyone's always on call and there's always issues and people are trying to leave that team. And what are you doing, Louis? Like, why aren't you managing them? And it's, you want that, right? To be fair, I've been very lucky. Almost all my managers have been promoted from within. They were all ICs at some point. They were just incredible people. And I have never really had these problems, but I observed them in other teams and I would steal their engineers on a regular basis and bring them into my teams. And they would come to me because they felt very good about my teams. And but so now I'm just putting the reverse, I'm reversing that, I'm putting the reverse hat on. What would I do if that was happening? And I think there's all kinds of signs. Thiago was pointing to a whole bunch of other ones, but this is a fun exercise to figure out if you've got a bad team in your hands and a bad manager, you're now responsible for picking the manager.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Is like whenever there are ICs telling you, I have a bad manager, but I would add a caveat to that. You have to be a little bit careful with that because there might be ICs that are trying to sabotage their managers, and especially ICs that are really noisy or they make a lot of noise but they don't deliver much, right? They are always trying to find reasons to sabotage their manager and to blame the manager. So I think you have to be careful about who is that coming from. But I would love to
jump in
hear
really quickly there.
Yeah.
Like, so when how's that saying go? I think it's from Game of Thrones, right? If you're going to go for the king, you better kill him or something. I totally butchered that. It's by the time you decide to make a complaint about someone that is like a manager or your manager, right? That is a data point. That is either telling you that you need to collect information about the person who's the complaint is about, because there are a lot of people who are not yet comfortable talking about it. So in your one-on-ones with them, you say, tell me about your working relationship with Bob, how has it been? Right? You collect information, or it tells you that this person is a complainer and is trying to make a move for whatever reason. So it's I'm going to bastardize that quote that goes, a complaint is a gift. And a complaint is a gift here because it is telling you that one of two things is going wrong in your organization. But yeah, I believe that by the time you get that complaint about a high, like a senior person, whether that's a senior IC or senior manager, this person has decided either they're making the wrong call or they've decided that situation has gotten so bad they're not able to resolve it, that they have to come to you. They've decided to trust you with this.
I think that's a really good point. I think is a data point, and you have to be careful. Who is that coming from? If it is someone that's complaining about things on a pip or whatever, you have to take with a grain of salt. But otherwise, if there are multiple ICs coming to you, I think that is so out of hand that you have to do something, because that's a major red flag usually. But I have seen the opposite sometimes, where a good manager is challenge the ICs and like micromanaging some of them, and the first reaction is a bad manager, right? Like someone is not delivering and the manager is getting really like deep and like micromanaging them to deliver something. There's, oh, this is unacceptable, all that. And you have to be careful with those instances. But like 100%, like, man, if someone like had the guts to escalate to you, I don't think I ever did that to any of my bad managers over the years, to go to my skip level and complain, even if the situation was really bad. You have to be like, you need to have a lot of balls to do that. It is a tough call.
Right. And not a lot of cultures weirdly give you that anonymous ability to complain about someone, right? Some do, but then what happens is you say, okay, I want to take this seriously. And when you go to people, they won't back it up now anyway on the record anymore, because they don't want to be the only person. It's all weird. And so I immediately give it a lot more weight if someone is going to come to you.
Sometimes it's a cultural mismatch too, right? Like sometimes you have people that want to leave a manager, but there's nothing wrong with that manager and the majority of the team loves them, but they might be very strict. For example, they might want things done a certain way, and that's how they run the team. And sometimes it's better that person moves off to another team, and there might not be anything wrong with the person that wants to move off, and there might not be anything wrong with the manager, and that can happen. And being a manager of managers puts you in a good position where you could shuffle someone from one of your teams to another one of your teams before things go really crazy. That's a thing that
be the matchmaker.
Exactly. You could be a good matchmaker. You see the personalities, right? You see that so-and-so is too strict, and maybe this person likes autonomy and they don't like being nitpicked. And so the other person is a lot more lenient. You put them on that team. I think that's a really powerful sort of spot to be. But anyway.
Yeah, feedback is definitely a gift, but it is also one data point. To your point, it can be totally about perception, or the loudest person on the team wanting to get a reaction or seeking revenge, or it's that 5 other people feel the same way, and this was the only person that had the guts to bring it up. In either case, it requires more evaluation and digging into, and it doesn't automatically mean that this person is going on a PIP or has to be fired. It could be that they're going back to being an IC or a principal engineer, staff engineer, and sometimes managers want that. They're like, this is enough. I don't think I'm doing anything useful here. I'm just contributing to meetings and people problems. I'm not doing any real work. I want to go back to being an IC. And that's completely fair and acceptable in certain scenarios.
Yeah.
I think, go ahead, Diego.
No, I was going to say, that's exactly, I love that Louis said that, because that's exactly what you should do. And I think that's also true, not only if there is IC at a manager that are not working out great, but even whenever there is a team that's not performing well, you just change one of the ICs, you bring someone that like has a different energy or that like will pull in a different direction, and that completely changes the dynamic. That's like the debugging problems on your teams, like is often involves like changing some of the pieces of it, right? Like changing some of the engineers that are there might be like the easiest thing to do, especially as a manager of manager. You have some flexibility to move people around your org without any impact at all. And I think that's probably the easiest thing to do in a lot of situations. And it's probably the first thing you should do.
Awesome. Thank you, team. It was a great chat. We went over compensation, work-life balance, strategy, changes in perception from first-line manager to manager. We went a lot deeper and a lot wider than I thought we would. Thank you, everyone. And to everyone listening or watching, we'll see you next week.